Well, good evening, everyone. It's just about 7 o'clock. You guys are great about logging in. And so thank you all for attending on this Tuesday night. Welcome to the engineering, our first one of this fall series, our engineering webinar. We've got an excellent panelist for you. But before we turn the microphone over to them, Elizabeth and I are going to introduce ourselves and welcome you to this session. So I'm Kate, I'm the Associate Director of Admissions. And so some of you, I'm looking down the list of names, I definitely recognize the names, fewer new names. And so you're going to get to know both of us throughout this cycle here as you look at MMA and see if it's the right fit for you. But tonight's webinar, the way that is best to interact with us is through the chat and through the question and answer section. And so you can pop those open, you can type to us, you can pose questions in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we possibly can throughout the evening. We won't be able to see you, but please don't be shy about asking questions and making sure that your questions get answered. So I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth to introduce herself, and we're going to be your host for the evening.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. My name is Elizabeth Allaby. I recognize many names out there, so probably you've met me before. I'm one of the admissions counselors at Maine Maritime, and basically Kate and I put these webinars together just to give you a chance to get a few more connections and understand a little bit more of the Maine Maritime Academy story. So we'll let all of our panelists introduce themselves, but just to echo what Kate said, it's true, we can't see you, we can't hear you, but we definitely want to hear from you. So make sure that you type in the chat, type in the Q&A. It can be this amazing chaos between all of us. We'll either answer your questions verbally or we'll, type out an answer, things like that. So this is really a session for you to ask, kind of the questions that are burning. So I'll kind of send it over. We'll start with Levi. If you want to introduce yourself, sort of say the typical things, who you are, where you're from, those items, and then we'll sort of move on down.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. My name is Levi Murphy. I'm a marine engineering technology major here at MMA. I'm a freshman, and I'm from Skowhegan, Maine. John and Holly.
Yeah, I'm Holly Bragdon. This is my husband, John Bragdon. I graduated from the Power Engineering Technology program in 1995. I'm just going to speak for you. With Marine Engineering Technology in 96. And we're both from Maine. He's from Castine, actually was born and raised in Castine. I grew up in Yarmouth, Maine, and we now live in Standish, Maine with our 2 sons.
I guess I'm next. I'm Dave Howard. Went to Maine Maritime, graduated in 1987, a few years ago. Graduated when I first started coming out with MET, MEO program. So based on the courses that I had previously taken, came out with the MET program.
So what you'll hear tonight is we'll certainly talk about the marine engineering programs, the power engineering programs. We'll try not to use too many acronyms. So if we lose you, just ask, don't worry about it. So there really is a wide variety of programs to choose from, certainly nowadays at MMA, and we'll kind of dive into all those. But I'll send it over to Kate first. I think she's got sort of the first question open for our panelists.
Yeah, I'm going to start, maybe we'll go in the reverse order. So I'm going to start the first question to you, Dave, and then when you're done, pass it along. How did you know engineering was the right path for you? Why did you decide to major in engineering? Well,
I'd always determined I wanted to go to Maine Maritime. My family's originally from Castine. I spent most of my summers in Castine. And it's this really cool school, right smack dab in the middle of Castine with this great big huge vessel down by the waterfront. And my family has a history of shipping out and being involved with vessels and stuff. So I knew early on that was my career path. I didn't know exactly what it entailed or what I was getting myself into, but I knew I wanted to go to sea on the vessels. I kind of bounced between going either deck or engine. Back in the day, we didn't make that decision until after you have the almost your freshman cruise, you would decide on the way home whether you was going deck or engine. And I bounced back and forth because, again, I love the vessels. I could have gone either way, but in the end, I chose to go with engineering because I like working down in the engine room. I like the feel of the engines rumbling under your feet and all that good stuff.
Thanks, that's great. Holly and John, can I pass it over to you? Why did you go engineering?
For me, I grew up in Castine, like Holly said, and I swore I would never go to Maine Maritime Academy. So after high school, I went to University of Maine for a couple of years, and I didn't get a lot out of that. And then after a few years after that, I thought, well, my father had been the vice president of finance administration at Maine Maritime for about 16 years when I was growing up there. And it just seemed like a great school. The friends that I had in high school that I met that were going to Maine Maritime all got out of there and they were very successful. So I thought, I can't go wrong going to Maine Maritime, and I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all.
Yeah, for me, it was my father. My father went to Maine Maritime Academy. He was class of 67. And I really liked the math and sciences, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it. And, I really looked up to him. So I kind of wanted to follow in his footsteps, except I get really seasick. So there was no way I was going out to sea. And they had just started the power engineering program the year before I went in. And as soon as they came out with that program, immediately I signed up for it. I mean, I had gone up to Castine as a kid in the summers, we'd sail up there and I'd spend, a couple of days there, and it was always kind of a highlight to go to Castine. And I love the town and the area, and engineering, it all just kind of fell into place for me.
That's great. Thank you, guys. Levi, I'm going to pass it to you. You're kind of fresh into this. Why did you decide to major in engineering?
All right. So before, let me start with, I took a tour here sophomore year of high school, and I pretty much immediately fell in love with the campus. I got to tour the TSOM and do all of that fun stuff. It was pretty great. But before that, I had always had an interest in the water and just the history of maritime, that kind of stuff. And these things had always interested me. I ended up coming here for that tour sophomore year, and I loved it. And then the years after that in high school, I ended up taking a pre-engineering class, and that further developed my interest in engineering. So by the time that I got here, I had finally decided that, hey, I want to do an engineering track. And I chose MET specifically because it's an accredited degree, which means if I decide that I don't want to ship out at all, or if I want to ship out for a few years and then come on land, I can do that. So it's a great mix between maritime and your life after living on land. So that's why I chose this major, and that's why I chose this school.
Awesome. Thank you. Elizabeth, did you have a question? If not, I've got one too. So.
Yes, I do actually, and this might be a little bit better answered for our alumni. I know you all just sort of alluded to the different, things you've done since you graduated from Maine Maritime. But I'm just curious if you wouldn't mind digging a little bit deeper, sort of what positions have you held, what jobs have you held, what types sort of jobs within the industry. And then Levi, when we get to you, I'll start with David. You can always answer this with, well, what's your dream job, right? So don't think that you're excluded from the question. So go ahead, David.
Okay, sure. Well, I've been very fortunate in my career. I consider myself in that I've been able to work in all different aspects, shoreside, out to sea. I've worked on numerous different type of vessels throughout my career, and as a result, have gotten to have a great appreciation for what it takes to go to sea, and even the different aspects of stuff of shoreside. When I first got on Maine Maritime, My first job was as a boiler operator at the Merck power plant down in Bedford. Eventually worked my way up to shift supervisor, and I was able to acquire a transfer up to the PERC power plant as a safety director slash shift supervisor. And then shortly after about, I don't know, I'm going to say about 4.5 years or so, you know, I had my license, but after 5 years, you have to renew your license. And at that point, about 4.5 years into, you know, into my career, I started thinking heavily about where I really wanted to be. And I come to realize, I was like, well, geez, if you don't do something about your license because you have to renew it and you have to have seat time on your license in order to renew, I decided to pursue a career shipping out. I worked for a company. I was able to get a job on some oil tankers for a company called American Trading and Transportation, called AT&T, not the phone company. But I got on there, was able to raise up my license to first assistant engineer with my steam license in motors. But the unique experience was with that company, we went up and down the East Coast, West Coast, Gulf Coast, made several trips through the Panama Canal, crossed over to Hawaii and places like that. If you've never been to Valdez, Alaska, it's definitely, it's a beautiful spot. Where the mountains come down and meet the seas, and you're passing up through the cut to get into Valdez Harbor, and you can watch, you know, you're going past the glaciers and you can see the rivers coming down over the side of the mountains and stuff. It's just absolutely beautiful. And so I consider myself fortunate that I've been able to visit pretty much, you know, the coast of America through this company, AT&T. The company started getting into bulk vessels, in which we used to carry bulk grain, and we would take it overseas to places in Africa, Kenya, Mozambique, South Africa, Angola, places of those areas. We even took some grain up into the Baltics at one point. So again, I just was able to expand, you know, my view of the world, if anything. After about 6 or so years of doing that, it was time for change. I came to work on some tugboats, ocean-going tugboats, going up and down the East Coast, going up. Actually, made a couple of runs into Bucksport, Maine, went up the Hudson Rivers and places like that. And then a friend of mine contacted me one day and said, "Hey, I'm the second engineer on the training ship State of Maine," and he says, "I'm looking to take a career with Exxon." And he said, "You know, I know you got a family. I know you're looking to come ashore a little bit more where you can still play with vessels and stuff like that." And so he gave me a heads up that he was leaving. So I applied for the position that became available as second engineer. And 13 years later, I was, you know, from 2000 to 2013, worked as, you know, an engineer aboard the training ship State of Maine. That job was probably my most unique job, most satisfying, most gratifying, in that when I took the job as a second engineer, I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. I've done second engineer stuff before. Not a problem, it's just learning a new vessel. And oh yeah, we got a bunch of MMA guys running around. But what I didn't know was the main part of the job was the students, you know, and working with them on a daily basis was actually, it was very gratifying knowing that you're helping students to get a start on their career. They were all motivated, deck and engine, and knew where they wanted to be. So it was a great pleasure to work with them. After about 13 years, decided again it was time to move on. Acquired a job as a first engineer on a ultra deep water drilling vessel. We drilled offshore Malaysia, off of Africa for a number of years. And, you know, and then the bottom fell out of the drilling industry for a little while. So it was time to move on. And recently I've taken a job as a facility director for a couple of hospitals, Ellsworth and Blue Hill hospitals, and a bunch of clinics, and been able to move on from there. And that's it in a nutshell.
No, I love it. That whole story really shows, you know, of course, the different chapters one will have that's specific to the field of engineering, from ships to shoreside, to hospitals, to ships that are shoreside or portside, you know.
I always thought I did it back first and then they come shoreside. I started out shoreside. And the folks I work with were MMA guys, you know. The oldest guy I worked with had graduated in the mid 60s. brought me on. I was the newest young guy right out of school, working down at Merck, and 80 class of '87, and you had the whole group, and it was great because they really looked out for you and help you along. It's a close knit community. No matter what year you graduate from MMA, and when they find out you're from MMA, you've got a home.
I think I'll send it to John next, just so we round out marine engineering, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
like Holly said, I graduated in '96. I sailed for about 3 years after that on some oil tankers. I was on a dredge for about a year. I had an opportunity to, Holly was working at the cogen facility at right on the UCLA campus. They had a couple of gas turbine engines. They were small, very similar to an airplane engine, and heat recovery steam generators. So we both worked at UCLA. We worked opposite shift from one another, so we had the same days off. We worked there for I worked there for about 2 years, and then we decided, because it looked like they were going to build a couple of gas turbine facilities in Maine. So we moved back to Maine in 2000, and they only built one gas turbine facility in Gorham, which Holly ended up working at. Westbrook, Calpine Energy
I
Center.
got the job.
So I needed to find something to do. So I went to, I got hired on with Penn Power. Penn Power was it's GE field service technicians. There was only a certain amount of them. So they, in the spring and the fall, when they're doing outages at power plants, they need extra help. So Penn Power was the variable workforce for GE. So I went to the GE school in Schenectady and had like 2 months of training on gas turbine installations. And then I did some traveling after I got out of there. I went to England, and I was installing a 9FA. It was a combined gas turbine, steam turbine generator, all in one line. And and I went to work in Florida for a winter. They were installing 8 7FA gas turbines in Florida. So I was down there for about 4 to 6 months installing those. And then I decided I didn't want to travel anymore. So I took a job at a power plant in Newington, New Hampshire. They were building a combined cycle facility in Newington, New Hampshire. So I took an operator's position there. I worked there for probably 4 years as a lead operator, shift work. And then I got the opportunity to work at the paper mill in Westbrook, Maine, which had a 600,000 pound per hour steam boiler and steam turbines. And I was a maintenance planner there. And then I was promoted to maintenance manager, which I'm currently the maintenance manager at the Westbrook mill. I had 50 maintenance employees that worked for me and 7 salary. And that's currently what I do now.
Not bad, managing a team of 50.
Yeah. Mine's not nearly as exciting. So as he said, we went out to UCLA. I had an opportunity out there. Actually, the time we knew that they were going to be building gas turbine power plants in the state of Maine. So with him shipping out, it didn't really matter where we ended up. So a friend of mine was working out at the UCLA power plant and said, come on out here and get some gas turbine experience. So I went out there. We lived out there for a while, and that's a nice thing about this, our degrees is that there's power plants all over the country, all over the world. So you can go pretty much anywhere and get a job. And actually my company's hiring for plenty of those positions right now, if anybody's interested. But so we were out at UCLA, and then, they built the power plant in Westbrook. Calpine owns that power plant. And I immediately we moved back here so that I had a better opportunity. If I was living here, then maybe I'd have a better opportunity at getting that position. And I did. I ended up getting a job as the plant engineer after having been an operator. So I was a plant engineer for about 11 years, and then I've been the plant manager. I got promoted to the plant manager, I think about another 11 years ago. I'm almost 22 years at that power plant now. So we actually hire co-ops. John does as well at SAPI. We hire co-op students that are in the power engineering technology program. We bring them in for a summer. We give them hands-on experience. They get to see everything instead of reading up, in a book what a pump looks like. They actually can go put their hands on it. They see it running. They're involved in outages. They get to do day-to-day maintenance, electrical, mechanical. They work on their projects. We do have to give them some, projects that they may not like, but it's a give and take situation. We're gonna give you the education, and you got to get something. We got to get something out of it too. But so yeah, and I interact daily with Maine Maritime Academy graduates, not just on our staff, but also our vendors and suppliers, and a lot of the service people that are coming in, working on pumps, working on valves, salespeople, the water chemistry, people that come in. They're everywhere. They're all Maine Maritime Academy graduates. When they get that engineering degree, can pretty much do whatever interests them, any aspect within the HRSGs. They come in and get the guys that come in and do the HRSG inspections, and it's amazing the network of Maine Maritime Academy graduates that you run into when you're out in the field. So, and it's definitely a tight connection.
I'm glad you said that. I have a close friend who graduated in systems engineering from MMA in 2015. He was out at a job site. I forget exactly where in Texas. They build new production lines. And the job site manager was like, "Oh, you're from Maine Maritime? You guys are everywhere."
Yep. Yeah. The CEO of our company, he's like, "Oh, you're," when he came in, he's like, "Oh, you're Maine Maritime." He goes, "Well, yeah, we love Maine Maritime grads." So, that says a lot with a company the size that we have.
Definitely. Thank you both for giving me, well, all three of you, sort of that extensive pseudo resume, so to say. Levi, I'm gonna leave it to you, put you on the spot since you're just beginning out, right, in the education. What's your dream job? What do you want to do?
Okay, so starting off, I came here wanting to, ship out and go see the world and all that. And I really don't know if I still want to do that. There is the opportunity there for me to do that. I'm currently thinking more, land-based, but if I do decide that I want to ship out, I can always go do that. And that's what's so great about Maine Maritime. You, at least through this degree, you get the opportunity to go ship out for a few years and then come on land, or like David said, he worked on land at first and then ended up shipping out. So, there are just so many opportunities here. And before coming here, I didn't fully grasp how many there were. I thought, hey, I'll get this marine engineering degree and then I can go ship out my whole life. And then upon coming here, and getting more information and hearing all these things that people had to say, I started to realize that it's more than just working on a ship in your future. You can work in a power plant. If you want to, you can volunteer for the fire department and then go do that as a career. Pretty much every single town in the country needs firefighters, emergency response. So you have the chance to do that through here while getting a degree. I also work in IT. They can get me certified to do that. Plus I get work experience through them to be able to do IT. And that's the demand for IT is only growing. That's 4 career opportunities right there. And I'm only a freshman. So it's great to see where MMA can take me.
And the
It's only
one,
the first month of your freshman year too. Just imagine if we pegged them, at the end of the semester, we'll be adding to that list. Well, thank you guys for for shedding some light onto the various career opportunities there are out there. And I know we're only just barely scratching the surface as to what you can do with that engineering degree. But we did have one question that was posed in the question and answer. And the question is, if you go out to sea, what is your day-to-day life like as a marine engineer? What do you do? What does a marine engineer do from day to day? And so I'm going to maybe start with you, John. And you've both worked out to sea, and then what do you do? Just watch.
It's been, it's been like 25 years since I've been on a ship, but you don't forget. Essentially, it was a little bit shocking to me. I got on I think my second boat, and I got on the ship, and the guy I was relieving was getting off, and he said, "Good luck." So you essentially, when you come out of Maine Maritime, they prepare you so that when you go on that boat, you know how to identify systems, trace systems, figure things out pretty quickly so that you can be in the engine room on the ship. The day-to-day is pretty much you stand a 4-hour watch, and then you get some downtime, and then you generally work your overtime, and then you stand another 4-hour watch. And during the watch, you're depending if it's a diesel ship, you're checking fuel oil strainers, you're doing rounds, and you're checking oil pressures, you're checking generators, you're checking electrical infrastructure and all that. And then for the overtime, you're replacing pumps, or you're replacing seals, or you're working on bearings, or just anything to do with pump, seals, motors, electrical, all of that. And so you essentially you work a 12-hour day, excuse me, and it's depending boat to boat, but it's usually 6 days a week and often 7 days a week, because quite honestly, if you're out there on a ship away from your family, you want to be making as much money as you can, and so you might as well be working 12 hours a day, because when you come home and you're home for 2 or 3 months, that's the time where you can rest. So
Yeah, thanks for that insight. David, do you have anything to add?
Just, mirror image what John just said. Essentially, 12-hour days, whether it's usually split up between standing watches or depending on the vessel you're on. A lot of preventive maintenances that you do. The biggest thing is, keeping the lights on, keeping the propeller turning, and keeping the AC up and running, and everything else in between. You're essentially a jack of all trades. You're going to get your hands in electrical. You're going to be doing plumbing, air conditioning and refrigeration. You're going to be you're responsible for all that. You're responsible for keeping the main propulsion going, whether it's diesel, gas turbine, or steam vessel. Same thing with keeping the lights on, keeping electricity rolling. And one of the things that Maine Maritime prepares you for, I think, is how to handle situations. Anybody after a couple tries can start the main engine. You follow steps 1 through 10, and in the end, you hit the start button, the engine starts. But what do you do when you get to step 4 and the engine, you come across a problem, or you get to the end and you hit that start button and the engine doesn't start? So that's when the MMA training really kicks in, and you're able to troubleshoot and figure out, what's going on. Do I, no fuel pressure, low oil pressure, or starting air pressure isn't where it should be, or, whatever it takes, or you're underway and the lights go out all of a sudden. How do you handle those situations? I think Maine Maritime does a really good job in getting people prepared to be able to troubleshoot and keep things going and doing what you got to do.
I think that
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that what you had said kind of fulfills a lot of that engineering, whether you're out to sea or working in a power plant. So Holly, go for it.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I said it pretty much is the same thing. If you think of the marine engineering program, when you're on a ship, almost the same thing as a power plant, except in our power plant, everything's a lot bigger, you know, and there's a lot of auxiliary systems that go into being on a ship. However, it's the same thing. It's that you still get the same kind of skills coming out, whether you go shoreside or you go marine engineering. You're still going to walk out with being able to evaluate situations and make decisions very quickly. You're going to be able to troubleshoot. You're going, you know, Maine Maritime, I think, is a leadership school. Is designed to produce leaders. It's designed to produce managers in this industry, people who are going to be in positions that have to make decisions very quickly. And same thing. I mean, we're trying to keep the lights on as well, you know, for, you know, the state. And so, but, you know, it is the same exact approach, though, that you run into situations in a power plant is used whether you're on a ship, you know, or the power plant. Same approach, same education. It's just a little bit of the nuances are different. So, but fundamentally, we're both the same.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make. Thank you.
The other
Are you
piece is
excited
that-
to go out to sea and get your hands dirty and do what they were just describing?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the opportunities that I get here.
Have you, within this first 6 weeks, 5 weeks of your semester, have you been able to engage in some of the engine facilities that we have here?
I have, yes. I've actually stood a few watches on the ship, you know, doing my rounds, going around checking gauges and whatnot. And I believe I have diesel lab either next semester or next year, but I will have a class where I get my hands on an engine and, you know, tear it apart, work on it, and get a hands-on understanding of how it works.
That's great. We don't wait for you guys to get your hands dirty. We push you in right away, which is really important. I'm going to pass it to you, Elizabeth, for the next question.
Yeah, absolutely. The one point I wanted to echo, I get asked a lot, especially as an admissions counselor. Well, you know, what's the difference between mechanical engineering or electrical engineering and the programs that MMA offers? And it was just really nice to hear you all echo sort of what I say, is that it is a little bit more of a broad-based program where you're going to dive into those disciplines so you can do many jobs in many types of places, as opposed to specializing in one versus another. So that was just really great to hear. I was like, oh, good. You know, that is exactly what happens on a ship and a power plant, things like that. So thank you for saying all of those pieces too. We had this question come in, but I think we sort of just covered it. Just as the engineering program hands-on freshman year, certainly it sort of ramps up, especially that second semester. Levi, you don't know this yet, but just wait till you do pre-cruise, a set of assignments in which you will trace out every single system in the training ship. It's kind of behind me if I can move out of the way, right? So we don't really, you know, waste any time putting you in a ton of lectures. You can't escape it. Lectures are a great vehicle to get you a lot of information all at once, but for the most part, you're going to be in a lot of different lab spaces. Which was kind of what I wanted to ask you all about, was sort of what were some of the memorable lab spaces or memorable classes that you had at MMA? I bet you quite a few of the spaces are similar. I was just thinking of when you said, Holly, earlier that you wanted to show your son when you visited campus some of the spaces that you were more familiar with, just to sort of highlight, yeah, you are going to have a lecture, but then you'll go touch the thing, right? You'll go touch the engine, break it apart. You'll go into the turbines, those pieces. Do you want to start, Holly?
Yeah, that was the part that we were saying, how when we went on the school tour, unfortunately, for Maine Maritime Academy student at the time, didn't realize how well we knew the campus. So we ended up taking him on a tour. And we went down to the welding lab and, you know, those things, you learn how to weld. I mean, you know, how many engineering schools are you going to go to? We actually learn how to weld and use, you know, lathe and machine, you know, machine shop equipment. I mean, you get a little piece of everything there. But yeah, having Jack go through some of those labs, that I think when he went on that tour, that's what really got him. I mean, but for me, I think it was the simulator, the power plant simulator, which I know they still have. And that was the one where you actually have to start a power plant up, you know, from cold plant all the way to bringing it online and syncing it to the grid. So that was a whole course within itself. So that was kind of a cool one. I know the electricity lab has gotten much more advanced.
Oh, yeah.
Since we went to school there. We were kind of excited when we saw that, and maybe a little more than our son was, but because he's looking at that. But no, I mean, there's so many labs. I mean, that you've got all the physics labs, you've got power equipment lab, you've got where you go down and there's the cutouts of the gas turbines, there's cutouts of valves, there's cutouts of all of that stuff. There's just so much hands-on activity. And I think that is what when we're talking about being out there in the industry, that's what separates Maine Maritime Academy graduates from the rest of the fleet, is the fact that we have had all of the hands-on experience. We've gotten our hands dirty. You know, Levi, you probably are in your fundamentals of engineering already, right? You have that class you're taking right now. That class automatically gets you right into the basics of HVAC and air compressors and different types of pumps, different types of valves and all that stuff. It just throws you right into it. So from day one, you're submersed in it, and it's very interesting stuff. I mean, it's not sitting in the classroom. It's, all the time, of course, is the classroom activity, but just that there's so much hands-on activity at that school. Keeps it interesting.
We do still have the steam simulator. And when I try to tell people we have a steam power plant,
Yep.
it's like pseudo miniature. I mean, it's not miniature, but it's not.
It's
you know, the same scale.
Yeah, they didn't quite have that running when we were there. It was there, but they didn't have it hooked up, ready to go yet. So.
No, that's really cool. Did John or David, did you want to add anything? I think Holly, you kind of did a full complete list. No, that was great.
No, again, Holly pretty much nailed everything. And, the greatest thing about Maine Maritime is the hands-on components, which is a huge component, for your 4 years that you go there. Labs, a lot of time, the lectures, which, they are necessary. You are going to be in lectures, but, they echo what you do in lab. And, like I say, you are tearing apart engines and stuff. And one of the things, by getting to play with all this neat stuff where, electricity, ventilation, the diesel engines, the steam cylinders, stuff like that, it prepares you for when you get out in the industry to be able to know how all these different relationships, how all these different systems interact with each other, versus just being a specialist in turbines or just a specialist in boilers. Now you really know how the pumps and the heaters and the boilers and all that stuff, how it all interacts with each other. So when you make a change in one area, how does it affect something downstream? So it's very unique in that aspect.
And if I could just add on to, Dave was saying earlier about, on the ship, you have all these systems, you have the HVAC, you have air compressors. And, at Maine Maritime, I got my EPA Universal Refrigerant Technician certificate. So, sometimes drives Holly crazy because sometimes I want to troubleshoot my own refrigerator, pull things apart, and I don't always know what I'm doing, but I have a fighting chance because I understand, I understand how to use a meter. I understand, refrigeration and air compressors. We have a bunch of air compressors at the mill, and we don't do the service on them, but I understand the systems. So when you get out of Maine Maritime, you're well-rounded in, pretty much any kind of system you can think of. So.
Thank you so much. Kate, did you have one? If not, I've got one.
Oh, a question? Yeah, I do. Going to college and gaining a degree in engineering is certainly a financial commitment for many people. And we've had a couple of people ask, is it worth the money to get a degree in engineering? And I think you guys have answered this, but if there's anything else that you wanted to add to kind of speak towards that return on investment, that would be really great to be added. gonna just throw it out there. Whoever wants to start.
Can I say something?
Yes, please, Levi, go for it.
Okay. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that MMA ranks higher than Harvard in terms of return on investment. Isn't it fourth in the country for return on investment?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's a statistic right there to back up the fact that an engineering degree here is like very, like, extremely valuable if it ranks higher than Harvard. Another point to add, I'm blanking.
No, that's okay. I think that's a very valid point.
Mhm.
And if any of our alumni have anything to add too, in terms of like, is it even
Well-
worth it getting a degree in engineering these days?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't be sending our son to Maine Maritime Academy if we didn't think it was worth it. I can say that.
So there you go. Yeah, right there.
Same here, trying to get my son, he's interested for next year, so. Return of investment, yes, it's 100% there. In the period of time I worked at the academy from 2000 to 2013, I got the, be able to intermingle with a lot of the students, particularly, the engineers and the mates and stuff like that. And the driven students, they would graduate from MMA. It didn't matter whether you were shoreside, whether you was out to sea, every single one of them walked away with a really good job where, there was a lot of responsibility. You just didn't walk into jobs where it was kind of like, well, I'll slowly work my way up. They were jobs that put the responsibility on your shoulder. And as a result, they were lucrative compared to a lot of places. And the driven students are able to get their student loans and stuff paid off in a shorter period of time as a result.
I remember what I was going to try to say. Building on what the alumni here have said, a lot of places have Maine Maritime graduates, and if you are from Maine Maritime, pretty much being from the academy is like a return on investment itself, because people recognize the name and they know that, hey, this person who has a degree from Maine Maritime, they are a quality worker. So as a result of graduating from this academy, you are pretty much more likely to get a job than a lot of other people because of the reputation that our academy has.
You guys look after your own. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, obviously going to sea is way more lucrative than working shoreside.
Well,
we
depends.
as we've been doing it a long time, we do very well. But the friends that we have that are still sailing, they work 6 months a year. They're gone for 6 months a year, and they get compensated very well for it. And I think that there's a lot of the baby boomers are retiring, so there's going to be plenty of engineering jobs out there for years to come. There'll be a lot more job openings than there are engineers available to fill those positions. So it's definitely a great investment for the money. It's an excellent investment.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it is true. We've heard that from a number of alumni that they need some qualified people, and our school's producing as many as we can. And so the job market will be there for you. Whether you're a senior in high school looking at coming next year, or even a junior in high school just starting that college search, those jobs will be there for you to be had when you graduate Maine Maritime. For sure.
Hey, Kate, I saw
Yeah.
somebody had asked a question about, emerging offshore wind industry and focus classes and all of that. And yeah, I know, the industry is changing a lot between, battery storage power and geothermal. I know actually one of the professors out of the power engineering program reached out looking for some geothermal information based, for her class, because Calpine has a lot of geothermal power plants. But I know that throughout the industry, there are people that go out into multiple different areas of electrical generation, whether it be wind, like say geothermal, gas power plants. I mean, it's just hydroelectric, they're everywhere. So, and they are covered. I know even in the classes I was taking back in 95, we were getting into some of the newer technologies at that time. So Maine Maritime does keep up with a lot of those newer technologies.
Thank you for going into that. I think that's a really important thing to note, is that although we're training this legacy of mariners and power engineers, we're keeping up with that technology and producing engineers for this next century.
Well, yeah, I mean, Maine Maritime Academy has the Industrial Advisory Committee, so they have people that are out in the industry that are on advisory committees to try to help keep Maine Maritime, up to speed on what, the latest and greatest is and where the needs are in the industry and all of that. So it's definitely a big community out there.
So here's one kind of piggybacking off this. A student had asked this. In my very distant future, I imagine myself working for a company like SpaceX, a little bit different, designing things. Do you know any graduates who've gone on to specialize after graduation? It's not specifically SpaceX, that's something that's certainly newer, but could a student in theory go on, do something like that? I can at least speak to one alumni who I know has gone on to specialize. I'm forgetting what his PhD is in. Dale, Kate, help me out. Chemical engineering?
Yeah,
biomedical engineering?
Peptides, yeah.
He started his own company to manufacture proteins. So talk about a specialty, a tiny one, not one up in the sky, right? So my gut is to say, yes, you learn the pathway, how to learn quickly and how to learn efficiently, but I'd be curious what you guys would add to that.
Well, like we know people who are, in the marine insurance industry. We know people who, I don't know about SpaceX, but or something along that lines. But I mean, there's, what are you trying to think of somebody?
Yeah, I can't think of anybody.
People kind of go off and do some, there's a lot of people have started companies that we know of. I mean, one company that does Jason Oney, who's an alumni who is a big contributor to the academy. He started a company that does with computerized maintenance management systems. So it's kind of totally off the track of, a PET or an MET, degree. But, he has the foundation. I think that's what the key is with Maine Maritime is you've got the foundation.
And Governor Ken Curtis graduated from Maine Maritime. He was the governor of the state of Maine.
There you go.
Also a specialty, one could argue.
Yes. Yep.
Just to really drive that home.
I had a student when I was at the academy, and she went on to work for NASA upon graduation. She was a 5-year systems, and got recruited, or however it was she got started. She started with NASA. So, and you hear that from the students going all kinds of crazy different places that you're like, surprised you to maybe American, but there is a fit. Even like right now with myself, I'm working at a hospital. I never envisioned why would somebody from Maine Maritime work at a hospital. And when I was looking at the job application, it was all these crazy acronyms and joint commissions and state survey, all the stuff. And I had no idea what any of that stuff really truly meant. But I said, what the heck, I'll apply anyways. And I applied, and they hired me. And one of the things I said, look, this is what I've done for my career. This is what I know. But when it comes to hospitals, I got to admit, this is a whole new road for me. And one of the things I was looking at was like, well, no, we'll work on that with you. We'll bring you up to speed. What we're looking for is somebody with the experience that can handle situations and things of that nature. And since I've been in the hospital group here with Northern Lights, I have run into half a dozen or so MMA graduates through either the PET programs or guys who decided to, they were done with shipping and decided to come ashore. And some of them are right now are project engineers taking on, $30 million building new hospitals, being responsible for it, and things of that nature. So there's a place for us everywhere.
That's a good succinct kind of line. I have one question, if you don't mind, Kate, because we have gone impossibly 50 minutes without mentioning the regiment, which I'm pretty impressed by. Nobody's been like, hey, where's that Levi guy wearing that blue shirt? It's part of the regimental uniform. And at Maine Maritime, yes, we are a regimental school. Roughly 65 to 70% of our student body is in the regiment, but not everybody is. So power engineering students are not required to be in the regiment, though we certainly have quite a few who opt in, they volunteer to participate in the regiment. But I think maybe if we start with Levi and then we work our way sort of backwards, I think the question was sort of how do the regimental and the non-regimental courses differ? Maybe what even is the regiment? Why would I want to be a part of it? That type of sort of thing.
To start, regimental courses, if you're required to be in the regiment, you are in a license program, which means you're getting your unlimited tonnage license, whatever you're going for. And you're required to be in the regiment because that is a Coast Guard requirement, but also because it builds leaders. The regiment is here to build leaders. It's here to provide students with the skills that they need to succeed. I know personally, before coming to MMA, I didn't have great study habits. I would just kind of wing it in tests and do well, but that will not fly here. So being in the regiment, it taught me how to have that work ethic to be able to study and do my homework on time and really just work hard to do well here. It structured my life enough to where I've learned time management. I've learned new skills like ironing, polishing belt buckles, all sorts of fun stuff like that. My room generally looks immaculate. It's very neat because it has to be, and that's there to help build you as a leader, but also to build you as an adult. In terms of the leadership aspect, we have what we call the wedge here. It's basically a student body it's a regimental student body, and they're all like the leaders of the regiment, I guess. So we have different ranks, and each rank has its privileges, but also its responsibilities. And that's just to prepare you for, leadership, being in command of other people. Yeah.
I think that's a really great point, Levi. Thank you. It's really to prepare you for life skills as well as going out to sea skills. And so hence it's required for those students that are going out to sea on the world's largest ships or have that desire to gain that license. But something to note is that any student can be a part of that regiment. You don't have to be gaining that unlimited license. We have power engineering students that are in the regiment. We have our students in business that are in the regiment. We have students in ocean studies that have volunteered to be in the regiment for these very reasons, for these leadership skills, for these people management skills, for resume boosting skills. So there's many reasons to really consider the regiment if your major does not require it.
I think also, like we were talking about, the fundamental classes are all the same between regiment and non-regiment. You just start getting into more specifics when it comes to, obviously being on a ship, learning things. It is different. You have different classes when it comes to being on a ship. And when you're in shoreside, obviously they're not using the power plant simulator and, not doing some of the hydro classes and things like that, learning about other forms of power generation. So that's where things get different, but your fundamental classes are all the same. When you're talking electricity and you're talking physics and you're talking, your calculus classes and, diesels and, electricity. It's all, I mean, electricity on the ship, same as electricity on shore. So as an electricity in your house, it's all one and the same. So it's those classes are all the same.
That's a good point too, because sometimes I get asked, you know, is it kind of like two schools, the regimental and the non-regimental students? Not
Mhm.
even a little bit. You're blended.
Yeah, we are all in some classes together. Some classes you walk in and it's a mix of, you know, mix of majors, and other classes you do go in and it is just your major, but you know, you do definitely get a blend. So everybody does get to know everybody there. And that is I think that I go back to why MMA, I would say besides the family tie and everything, the big thing for me was the small size of the school and the fact that you do know everybody there. The professors know you by name. The professors are always there for you. You always have somebody, I mean, you basically know everybody in your class. There's nobody you don't know when you graduate. You know everybody, regardless of the major that they're in. So that is a big difference between going to a larger college. Yeah, it's a huge advantage.
I can speak from personal experience. My calculus class is like, I think there's half regimental students, half not. My chemistry class is pretty similar. And a good point to add is that none of these classes are more than like 40 people. My chemistry class is like 27. You know, it's small class sizes, which makes it so that the teachers can be there to help you as well.
Yeah, that personal relationship. We can't send you out into the industry having just sat in the back of the classroom looking at it in a book. You got to be front and center, touching it and doing it. Leave with that muscle memory too, which is really exciting.
Yep, you're a name, not a number at Maine Maritime.
Yes. It's
These are
true.
all things we say. It's so nice to hear.
I know, it's almost like you have our talking points, but you've never heard it before.
Right.
David or John, did you want to add anything to sort of the regimental question? I imagine both of your experiences, you were regimental.
Well, I'm sure David went through a lot worse
Yeah.
indoctrination than I went through. And I'm sure my indoctrination was a lot worse than what Levi went through. I know over the years, it's definitely not what it used to be. And even Holly's father in 1967, listening to some of the stories of what they went through. But, you know, again, we had classes with non-regimented students, and it just brings it brings another level of, you know, different groups together, and everybody works towards a common goal. So.
Well, it is almost 8 o'clock. So if there's any last words of advice for those that are viewing, to our prospective students and families, if there's any last things that you guys wanted to add in, as they're beginning their journey of figuring out if this might be a place they want to apply, if this might be a place they want to attend, or if this might be a place that they want to keep on their list. And so if there's anything that you guys want to give them as a word of advice, please do so.
Well, I guess I would say right off, if you're at all interested or intrigued or whatever, and you haven't yet, you know, pay the academy a visit. You really don't get a full grasp of what they have to offer until you physically walk in and see the labs, the steam simulators, walk down on the vessel, see the lathes where you get to make things, and the welding shops and all that MMA has to offer. You know, it's impressive. It very is impressive. It's a hands-on school. If you like working with your hands and tinkering with things, or trying to figure things out, or how to make things better from what they are right now, then, you know, MMA could be a great career path, a great career choice.
It's a great career choice. That's coming from us.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly haven't looked back, and if I had to do it over again, I would certainly pick MMA as my choice as well.
Yeah, just, if anybody I'm in Southern Maine. If anybody wants to see, come to the paper mill and check it out, they can get a hold of Katie or Elizabeth, and by all means, I'd show them around. I'd have no, I have no problem meeting with somebody and showing them what I do. So.
Oh, that would be really kind of neat. Thank you for that
I
offer.
want to come.
Yeah.
And in exchange, we can show you the ship. I know you've already seen it.
I would say to the gentleman who asked about whether, I assume it's a gentleman, maybe might be a lady, I don't know, about being able to pull your hair back. I would suggest you go into the power engineering program if you want to keep your long hair. That was one of the questions that I just saw pop up, so I figured I'd answer that as I saw it come up.
Yeah, I typed them an answer.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Did you say go PET? Yeah, I guess I don't really, I think it's to each their own as far as what they want to do and where they want to go. I can only say that, going to Maine Maritime has definitely made a difference in our lives. Again, we've got third generation going now, so it must be a good school if we've 3 generations and cousins and, and family and everything all over going to school there. So I wouldn't send my son there we wouldn't send our son there if we didn't think it was a worthwhile school to go to. So I think that probably should be a strong enough message.
Yeah, that speaks for itself. Levi, if you could do it all over again and you're still in it, would you have chosen MMA now that you're sitting here?
Definitely. Yeah. I feel like even some of the hardest parts like RPT were totally worth it, because first day, the day before you didn't know any of these people, but then that first day it's like an instant bonding experience. Everybody's doing the same thing, and it's like you've known them forever. I've been here for just about 7 weeks now. We're on our 7th week, I believe, and I have so many friends because of the regiment. It's a great opportunity, and I highly recommend, even if you are a non-regimental major, to join the regiment, because it will help you get your life together, and it will help you make friends, and just build yourself as a leader. It looks great on a resume too.
It looks great on the resume for sure.
I like that as a slogan. Join the regiment. It'll help you get your life together. I think
We're going to leave you guys with that one. You guys can all sleep on that one. If you have some more questions, please send them to Elizabeth, and I will share emails in the chat. We're also hosting a panel on Thursday evening with students, so you can hear a little bit more of that student perspective, why they chose MMA, what they're studying. So there's going to be a range of class years joining us on Thursday. And if there's anything else between now and then, or even afterwards, we're here, we're available. We would love to continue this conversation. So don't be a stranger. And thank you again for spending your evening with us. And thank you to our panelists for spending your evening with us and sharing what you have to offer for our prospective students and families looking at MMA. So
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
good night, everyone.